If you travel along the Flinders Highway in Australia's remote outback, you are driving on a road with a deeply unsettling history. Over the last 50 years, 11 people have gone missing or been found dead along this single stretch of pavement. Today, locals simply call it the Murder Highway. In the spring of 1978, three friends, Karen Edwards, Tim Thompson, and Gordon Twaddle, set out to cross that very landscape. They were young, adventurous, and riding motorbikes side by side on an ambitious cross-country trip that started in Alice Springs. 22 days into their journey, a couple walking their dog made a gruesome discovery just off the side of the highway. Karen, Tim, and Gordon were found dead in a dry creek bed at Spear Creek. All three had been shot at close range with a .22 caliber rifle. They were left where they fell, and almost all of their personal property, including their motorbikes, was gone. Investigators eventually recovered the stolen property and knew the exact weapon used. Yet, more than 4 decades later, the Spear Creek killings remain completely unsolved. When a murder case sits cold for this long, we tend to assume the trail simply dried up. But with Spear Creek, investigators aren't dealing with a lack of clues. They are paralyzed by an abundance of them. A major accident in the opening hours of the search split the investigation in two. The resulting timeline produced 2 entirely distinct suspects, who divide the facts perfectly down the middle. We are left with a permanent legal stalemate. The hard physical evidence points straight to a local thief, while multiple eyewitness accounts point to a passing serial killer. In the eyes of the law, the 2 suspects perfectly cancel each other out. On the second day of the investigation, homicide detectives hired a helicopter to survey the crime scene from the air. Within seconds of takeoff, the chopper plummeted and slammed into the ground. The detectives crawled away from the wreckage, mostly unhurt, but the investigation itself was crippled. That crash obliterated the crucial first 48 hours of police work, the golden window where evidence is fresh and suspects are still moving. The delay handed the killer a massive head start. They used that time to dump the stolen motorbikes and vanish into Mount Isa, an isolated mining outpost full of transients and cheap accommodation. By the time detectives recovered their momentum, the physical crime scene was thoroughly degraded. They had to rebuild the killer's path backward, relying on scattered circumstantial clues found weeks after the trigger was pulled. That backward search led police to a 23-year-old Mount Isa local named Bruce Preston. A month after the murders, police acted on a tip and found Tim's missing motorcycle sitting right in Preston's garage. He had been riding the dead man's bike around town. The connections deepened. Preston had recently returned from a road trip along the exact route the victims took. And his father owned a Toyota Land Cruiser, the precise model of car seen visiting Karen, Tim, and Gordon at their final campsite. When questioned, Preston lied about how he got the motorcycle. He eventually settled on a story claiming he stumbled upon the bike dumped on the edge of town, scared off 2 hippies who were trying to steal it, and took it for himself. Police at the time charged him with theft, but didn't think he fit the profile of a triple murderer. It took over 40 years for a modern cold case unit to re-examine that web of circumstantial evidence and formally charge Bruce Preston with 3 counts of murder in 2019. But the prosecution hit a wall. In 2023, the murder charges against Preston were entirely withdrawn. He walked free because his physical appearance flatly contradicted the only other solid piece of evidence in the case. To understand why the case fell apart, we have to look at what people actually saw back in 1978. Multiple independent witnesses reported seeing a mystery 4th man traveling with the trio, gaining their trust in the days before they died. The witnesses gave a highly specific description of this man. They noted his solid build, olive complexion, dark hair, and a thick, distinct black beard. This chart compares those eyewitness details directly against photos of Bruce Preston taken at the time of his arrest. Preston had fair skin, fair hair, and no beard. The Mount Isa local simply could not have been the man the witnesses saw driving that Land Cruiser. And there was someone else on the highway who did match that description. A man nicknamed George the Money Man was actively operating as a highway serial killer in remote Australia that same year. George the Money Man targeted remote travelers, shot them in the head, and stole their property and identities. Given that his last known movements tracked right toward Mount Isa, he presents a highly credible, completely separate theory for the Spear Creek murders. This is where the legal system locks up. To convict Bruce Preston, prosecutors have to overcome the standard of reasonable doubt. Any defense attorney can simply point to the sworn existence of the bearded man to shatter a jury's confidence in Preston's guilt. But investigators can't pursue the bearded man either. When Preston took Tim's motorcycle from wherever the actual killer dumped it, he contaminated the timeline and wiped out the physical evidence needed to trace the true murderer's escape route. By sheer catastrophic coincidence, a petty local thief and a ruthless killer crossed paths in the same evidence trail. By doing so, they provided each other with the ultimate legal shield. Now, the system is trying one last time to break the deadlock. In late 2025, a coroner officially reopened an inquest into the Spear Creek killings. Bruce Preston was called to the stand and forced to testify under the threat of perjury. It is the legal system's final, desperate attempt to extract the truth out of a half-century-old mystery. The investigation failed not because people didn't care, but because the physical facts and human memory pointed in exact opposite directions, creating a knot the courts cannot untie. For the families of Karen, Tim, and Gordon, this deadlock forces them into a continuous cycle of false hope. They are left waiting for answers on a stretch of highway that refuses to yield its secrets.